Happy Wednesday morning to you. I'm Gary Sutton. It is the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA, the pre-storm edition. And glad to be with you this morning on a beautiful sunny morning. What will we be saying this time tomorrow morning? But we'll deal with that when it gets there, okay? Good morning. I'm Gary Sutton. Great to have you with us. And we have so many varied subjects today. It's almost frightening. And we'll also get an update on the storm, not only from Dean DeVore throughout the show, but also down south. Tanya Powers is going to give us an idea of what is heading our way. And we start out the morning, though, about food. Yeah, food. David Almasi serves as a National Center for Public Policy Research's executive director. And Senator Chuck Schumer called for a ban on chemical used in bread that Obama's FDA said is safe as used. With us this morning is Dr. David Almasi to talk about a few more of our freedoms being intruded upon. Good morning, David. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Gary. Not a doctor, but I'm more than happy to be one on your radio show.
Well, you're going to be a doctor today. Doctor of Common Sense. How's that sound?
I'm on TV. I'm not on the radio.
That's right. We give you an honorary doctorate just for being on the show this morning. But, David, so many people in the country, they feel like their freedoms are being impeded. They're being trampled on. They're being messed with by the federal government for no apparent reason. Is this another case of that happening?
Well, this is a case of a scare because this girl called the Food Babe has a blog, and she scared at least 88,000 people into thinking that Subway sandwiches were filled with poison. And then Chuck Schumer jumped on and is trying to create a federal ban on this chemical that's used in bread that our government and our scientists and even international scientists has said that in the ways it's used, it's safe. There's no indication that there's anything to be worried about. But no, we've got the scare campaign going. They want to roll with it. And this,
let me see if I can do this. Azodicarbonamide, is that the way you say it?
I think that's pretty close.
Wow. And I couldn't even, it's supposedly in the bread that's made at Subway. Guess what I had for breakfast this morning? A Subway breakfast sandwich. I really did.
There you go.
Anyway, I mean, we have this Food Babe that comes out with this. We got Chuck Schumer jumping in on it. And I always kid with everybody I talk about, the most dangerous place in the world is 10 feet between a camera and Chuck Schumer. But, when you look at this, I mean, it seems like there's almost daily a scare about something that we often thought was safe. There's the government coming in here and telling us what we're supposed to eat. We see in New York when we had Bloomberg in there, all the different things we're not supposed to touch. Whatever happened to freedom of choice?
Yeah, they do not want you to have it because, in this case, you can't even say it's junk science that they're using because they're not using science at all. It's just fear and lies because this particular chemical has been approved by the FDA to be used in a small quantity. 45 parts per million of this azodicarbonamide can be used in the bread. The thing that the Food Babe is pointing to is part, not even the whole World Health Organization report, just a part, some report that they found in a conglomeration of reports that said that there can be asthma problems in humans. But that's only if you're working at the factory that makes it, you're walking around on the shop floor next to the giant 50-story high pile of this stuff, and you're breathing it in. That's where they're finding a problem, and that's nowhere near what you're going to get in your Subway sandwich, your McDonald's burger, or anything like that. So she's just outright lying, and Schumer, I don't think necessarily is outright lying as much as he's just going on our fears and saying, oh, my God, we need more government regulation.
Now, her central argument against this azodicarbonamide is that the chemical is also used in yoga mats and shoes. Mm-hmm. And in the article I got from the National Center, it says, really?
Well, sure, lots of things are used in lots of products.
Right.
Vinegar is used in cleaning products, yet I have no problem putting that on my
salad?
My salad,
sure.
My spinach. Citrus products are used in cleaning products as well. I put corn in my gas tank, and yet I feed it to kids.
I know.
I can't believe that we're doing. Why are we not banning corn? What a beast you are, David.
Yeah, what a beast. I can't believe you're doing that kind of stuff. And your poor kids. I can see it coming up now. Big headline, David Almasi, trying to kill kids.
Yeah, taking food out of the gas tank and putting it into kids' mouths.
Yeah, there you go. Isn't that the headline you'd probably get somewhere along the line? The idea here is that, once again, we have government by bullying. I mean, we have people who are out there kind of bullying because you have a guy like Schumer that's going to call for an FDA ban on this azodicarbonamide, right?
That's what he wants. Yeah, I mean, without any scientific basis whatsoever, and telling the government that he wants to have it to do the ban, telling them that they're wrong. Their scientists, their studies, their recommendations are wrong. No, I'm a lawmaker elected in the state of New York, one state only. I can push you to ban it for everybody.
And so you have the food babe versus all these scientists at the FDA who said this is okay. It's a good chemical here that's used in the bread and so forth. And it's amazing to me. I continue to watch these people who are so-called betters. They're out there looking out for us poor fools as we kind of bumble our way around in this Pac-Man type existence that we leave.
Yeah, it really is infuriating to think that we're in a society that benefits from the fact that we can now get food in good quantities from exotic places. We can get things that are out of season in our neighborhood. I mean, I can't go out in my backyard and get a banana here in the D.C. area. I can't get pretty much anything in my backyard at this time of year because of all the cold weather. But we can do that now. Why? Because of preservatives like the one that we're talking about banning. We can go down the street and get a Subway sandwich, a nice, cheap, nutritious sandwich, and we can do that because of these chemicals that she wants to have banned. So does she want to we can all go to Whole Foods, sure, but some of that's going to be preservatives, and a lot of it's going to be really expensive, and that's not going to be affordable to the most of the American people, especially in this economy. And so I don't know, does she want us to go back to caveman times? Apparently it seems that she does.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sitting there with a rock beating out the oats out of grain and trying to then eat and say, oh, this is so much better than the raisin bran I had for breakfast this morning. Something that really bothers me when the government asks for voluntary compliance, but just in case you don't want to voluntarily comply, it'll be mandatory compliance. Now, voluntary seems to me to be kind of a word that's heading out the door, and involuntary seems to be a word that is kicking its way down.
Well, that's a whole other can of worms we can do for the next hour. I mean, it's the government says, yeah, we think that this might be a problem, and here's how we might sue you if we think someday you've done something wrong. So they put the seed in the mind of the business owner, the attorney, the employer, whatever, that if I do what they say I shouldn't do, even though they have no legal authority right now, they may sue me later. So I'm just not going to do it. It's a threat. It's an intimidation. It's like the mob coming into your business and saying, if I was you, I wouldn't do that.
Well, the largest worry about this, David, is the fact that, okay, here you're dealing with something, a chemical in a Subway bread or whatever, but you think about all the other businesses out there in a state that you could ultimately put out of business. It's kind of scary.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's shuddering to think that the power. You're a business owner, and the government's leaning on you. What are you going to do? You're going to give in because especially if you're a small business owner, you can't compete with the government, size-wise, money-wise, power-wise, attorney-wise. You can't do that. So that's why a lot of these lawmakers feel that they can go in and bully people around, and that's essentially what it is. It's bullying.
Senator Schumer wants to throw out the window and demand the FDA ignore the science and ban a chemical because activists have catchy but foolish slogans like, we shouldn't eat foods with ingredients we can't pronounce. I was thinking to myself as I read that, we also shouldn't be ignorant, okay? We also shouldn't try to be stupid. And those are some of the things that kind of came to mind there.
Well, if I call azodicarbonamide Fred, is it okay to put in the bread now? We can do that.
Yeah.
And I was looking into Senator Schumer, by the way, and he's supporting a subsidy for Greek yogurt in our schools.
Really?
And I looked into how Greek yogurt is made. Every for every one part of Greek yogurt that's made, there's 3 parts of what's called whey, and the bodybuilders use that. But it's toxic in large quantities. You can't put it into the water. You can't put it into the ground. That's illegal by the government, by the way.
Well, you know what? We're going to have to wipe out that whole Little Miss Muffet thing, too, because in the curds and the whey, I mean, that was all part of the whole gig, right?
But apparently Chuck Schumer has no problem with us having an overabundance of toxic whey that we really have no idea what to do with, except right now they're giving it to farmers to feed to their cattle, which is hurting their digestive systems. So,
really?
I mean, in order for Chuck Schumer to get cheap Greek yogurt out of New York and into the America's schools, we have a whey crisis that needs to be dealt with, and I think somebody needs to make a law about this, Gary. Somebody needs to do something.
Yeah, David, I'm right there with you. I mean, really, if it's hurting us, you know, and the whole idea is we better be safe than sorry, right? I mean, that's really what it's all about. So don't eat anything.
And whey's a weird name. I can't pronounce that very well, so I mean, obviously it must be bad.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, you get it mixed up with Y, and it just makes it all crazy around here. But anyway, yeah, you know, what do these people want in the long run? I mean, a lot of us are getting a little sick and tired of hearing day to day what was good for us one time is now bad for us, and then next week it'll be good for us again. You know, a lot of us are getting kind of crazy about this.
It's total control by the government. That's I think what they eventually want, is that the government knows best. Now, the government may not know from one day to the next what's best, and they may change their mind, but ultimately the government knows best. We see that in the regulations. We see that in the way they want to deal with voting rights. I mean, it's the whole gamut. In the end, they believe the government is the best arbiter. Someone in Washington is much better than your neighbor or someone in another part of town that knows the situation.
You know, we talk about this chemical with Subway, but you have other chains that use the chemical, like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Arby's, Jack in the Box, Chick-fil-A, Dunkin' Donuts, for God's sake. Yeah. I mean, you know, what are we talking about here? I mean, is this, again, the opening door to getting in there? And you mentioned about getting us back to being cave people. I mean, ultimately, I can see us, you know, running around with rocks trying to stone something. But, but certainly not this chemical. It's amazing the floodgate that this could open in the long run if, God forbid, this whole thing kind of ends up going through.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is just a small thing. They can probably find something else to put in the bread. Sure. But you're right. It's a slippery slope. You're going to have a problem later on down the line when they want to take out bigger things, more important things. I mean, I keep on hearing things about Obamacare is making basic medicines harder to get these days because of the regulations. And that's something we need to worry about when you go to the hospital and you can't get easy sedatives, easy antibacterial kind of drugs, because there's just so many rules. The compounding rules that came up a couple of years ago about mixing drugs together, that's leading to potential drug shortages, and that's a life and death matter. It's not about whether my Subway roll is conditioned or not, or bleached enough.
You know, one of the things that bothers me, though, is Subway, for one, showed weakness by not defending the safety of its own ingredients. And so what happens is this bullying goes on, these companies knuckle under, and we end up really hurting the business of the United States. And again, the government shows a total disregard for unintended and maybe even intended consequences.
Yeah, I mean, another small example of that is genetically modified organisms. I forget the name of the cereal maker, but the people who make Cheerios,
right.
They're going to make Cheerios that don't have any GMOs in them. They're not going to make Honey Nut Cheerios without GMOs. They're not going to make, I think it's Frosted Cheerios without GMOs in them, because it's a very expensive prospect for the company. It's a very expensive prospect for the consumer. If the consumers want to get something without GMOs, great. More power to you. You can go out to places like Whole Foods. You can even go to your local supermarket and get things without GMOs. That's your choice. But if you're someone who wants to have more nutritious food that'll last longer, food that can be transported further, and things like that, GMOs, that's a pretty good idea. And so far, they have not been found to be the frankenfoods that the fear-mongers talk about.
Well, I'll tell you what. I know when Armageddon's going to get here, when they take the O's out of Cheerios, and then I know it's going to be time to pack it in. We're going to come right back, Dave, with a final thought on this. We'll take a very quick break. We've got David